Sure.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. We are holding in the middle of chapter 46 on page 703. 703. Just to refresh your mind, the rabbi is trying to assist us in bonding with God through love with the idea of a reflection. The rabbi uses the example of a mirror. Whatever facial expression I project to the water, a body of water, it will reply back with the same reflection. So if I have a happy face, I get a happy face. I think I shared with you that we are the King Solomon in the book of Proverbs used water, kemayim apanim lapanim, not a mirror, even though they had mirrors. Because water, I shared with you, there are two things about water that makes it unique. A, in order for you to see your face, you have to bend. You have to bend. Same is about another person. You need to know that we need to bend over. The second is the water will reflect whatever it is that it's against it or right in front of it, provided the water are calm. But if it's gushing water, if there are waves, mirror is not there. That's why the Hasidic interpretation to the idea of water. In other words, you cannot expect someone to express the same emotions that you're projecting if they are not in the right mindset or in their hearts, if they are going through a challenge, if they are not in a mood that is susceptible for happiness, for connection, for bonding, for kindness, don't expect something different. I shared with you about, I think sharing with you the stories will bring the point very well. I shared with you about this father and son that had a debate who is going to get the coat, the winter coat. The father said he's much older, so he's colder. The son said he has to support. And the next day, when they came, the rabbi said to come back. When they came back, each one wanted to give it the other. And they were fighting now the opposite. And then the rabbi got up and says, you know what? I have an extra coat. I'll give you both. So they asked him, how come yesterday you did not offer us the coat? He says, yesterday I didn't even think about my coat. But now when I saw how much you love each other, one another, and you care about one another, I said, I want to be acting in that way. And suddenly the thought came to me that in my attic, I have an extra coat that I'm not using. In other words, no matter what, it works magically. If I express love towards somebody, it will break the wall. It will make that person heart melt. Will it always bring me to the results or to the outcome I want? Not necessarily, but definitely have an impact. The Rebbe said to many people who fired employees that to fear the employees' wrath, the Rebbe said to think positive about that person, to think kindly about that person, and it will melt their heart. I shared with you the young rabbi moved to town, and Getzel was the town sheriff, and everybody feared him, and he hired a bunch or an army to kill the rabbi. And then he turned to the rabbi and totally, completely turned around, became his biggest friend. And the reason is because the rabbi did not stop thinking about the mercy and how much is missing in life, that how can the rabbi help him and make him live a better life. And the man was impacted just like an arrow straight into his heart. Um, I shared last week, but I want to share it one more time because I think I did not give enough attention to it, and I'm not sure that with words I can express it, but it's very powerful. It's not just how much, if I love somebody, a spouse, a sibling, a member of the congregation, but it is the intensity. You see it with the verses in Psalm. I don't want to go through the details because it's more about the Hebrew. But the Rebbe says that the person will experience or appreciate or be impacted by the intensity of the love. So if I have very strong emotional feeling towards a person, the intensity of that feeling will have an impact on that same level. So the more intense the expression, the farther it goes, the most powerful it becomes.
You're talking about the Rebbe of the book. You're talking about the Rebbe.
What?
So much the Rebbe who was the author of the book, not about the Rebbe who passed away.
The Alter Rebbe. When I say here the Rebbe, usually it is the Alter Rebbe. Yes, thank you for pointing it out. So what the Rabbi wants us to know is that if we take a moment to contemplate about what did God do for us, it will create. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to study Torah. Just think for a little bit. And the Rabbi is going to go through the entire chapter. It's a very long chapter. The Rabbi is going to go through the details of how great God is and how low we are as human beings. And as we studied last week, God will step out of his palace, go out of his country into a dunghill, and from there he will bring us out and bring us to the palace and say, you have a key to my private chamber. You can walk in anytime you want. If you have any requests, you need anything, no matter what it is, you can always come in. How appreciative are we going to be to that king? How much more so is between God and the Jewish people, as we'll discuss. The entire discussion now is about the entire discussion right now is about the Jewish people as a whole, as a community. Later on, the Rabbi would talk about individually the relationship between God and an individual. And in addition, the Rabbi in chapter 47, the Rabbi will bring it down to earth for today. Right now, the Rabbi is going through history of picking us as his nation by taking us out of Egypt. Egypt was the most defiled place on earth. It's called Erva Sa'aretz, the most despicable part of the universe. It is a dunghill, spiritual dunghill. And God lowered himself all the way himself, not sending the police or not sending ministers. As we know by the firstborn, when God took us out, he himself was there. Ani hu, ani velo acher. Right? ואני ולא מלאך, אני ולא שרף, אני הוא, אני ולא אחר. No angel, no ministering, no ministers, only God directly himself. Why? Because God cares about us. Once we understand that, it comes to appreciate godliness. And the Rabbi, so right now the Rabbi is talking about as a nation and in the past, establishing a relationship. Later on in this chapter, the Rabbi is going to circle back to a human being one-on-one. Chapter 47, the Rabbi is going to talk about what happens today to us as a nation, as individuals. We are holding on page 703. I am going, it says on the side 10 ER or in linear year at 60 ER. That's what we're holding. So I'm going to be reading. The reading should be a light reading, and remind me to share with you a story with the rabbi from England. Ali, will you remind me after we get into a little? So you have to pay attention to the study.
Not that good.
Your memory is not that good.
As good as me.
The Alter Rebbe goes on to explain that all the details mentioned in the parable of the king are infinitely more applicable with regard to the object of the parable, which is the relationship of God with each and every Jew. He brought in the parable of a king that goes out of his palace himself, going to a dunghill and picking up somebody. Those details, specific details, every part of the detail is applicable to the Jewish people. For God, the King of Kings, showed his unending love of the Jewish people by taking them out of their nethermost level in Egypt and exalting them to the highest of levels by giving them the Torah. Through study of Torah and performance of mitzvot, Jews are united with God to the utmost possible degree. So taking the subject, the slave, the servant from the dunghill, but not just giving him a house, putting him in an apartment, taking him to a beach house. He's taking him to the palace. And in the palace, he led them into the innermost chamber of the king himself. That's the Torah that God gave us. The bond between me and God is unique, and no one else has that access to God like the Torah allows us. So we have the key directly to God. This was so not only at the time of the Torah was given, but at all times, as shall soon be explained. Contemplating this matter will arouse within every Jew, as water mirrors the face to the face, a parallel love of God that will arise great love towards God to reciprocate the great love that God has shown towards us. In a matter corresponding in every detail to the said figure and image of the love shown by the mighty king to the most lowly individual, but to a much greater degree, doubled and redoubled infinitely more than in the parable, has our God dealt with us. So we use the example of a king going to the dunghill. The comparison here is many, many, many times much more. Why? For his greatness is beyond comprehension. A human being is finite. After all, he's a human being like I am, but he's a king. God is not a human being, and his greatness is infinitely farther than a human being. Just as God is infinitely greater than any physical king, so too does his kingdom extend over an infinitely greater territory, so to speak, and the rabbi is going to use proofs that God's kingdom is nowhere to be compared to a human king or kingdom. And he pervades all worlds and encompasses, that is, transcends all worlds. And from the Holy Zohar, as also from our master Rabbi Yitzchak Luria of blessed memory, Arizal, it is known of the multitude of eichalot, chambers, these being the specific levels within each spiritual world, and worlds which are infinite, and of the myriads of angels found in each world and eichal, in each chamber, countless and without end. Says Rabbi, every country, no matter how large and vast, there is a finite number of subjects, of people. The king cannot reign over an untold number of humans. By God, he created angels, he created chambers, he created universes, and there is no end to the universes. Even the universe itself, by definition, is finite, yet there is no limit to how many universes God created. I think that in the Milky Way, they say there is 100 billion stars. And now they have discovered that there are 100 billion galaxies up in outside. All that was created by God. And the numbers are figuratively, you don't know exactly because it's impossible. Meaning the creation that God created, even though there is finite universes, the Torah, the Arizal and the Zohar tells us that there is no limit to the universes God created. It's impossible. So when we talk about 4 categories, remember Atzilut, Bria, Yetzir, Asiya, within each world, there is endless levels, endless degrees. And if someone when I was young, the rabbi was trying to explain it, and here is the way the rabbi explained. How many human beings there are? We have a finite number. I don't know it. I'm not sure I don't think ChatGPT can give us a number, but we know there is a finite number. But how many mindsets exist in this universe? How many types of people, faces, fingerprints? I can tell you there is infinite. You know why? Because as long as the world exists, there are human beings that are being created. And each human being, as we discussed before, 2-3 weeks ago, their mindset is unique, and there was never been a human being that was created like that mindset. So when you're born, and I'm born, my child is born, that's why for us Jews, Every human being is precious like the entire universe. Anyone who saves a life is considered like he saved the entire universe. You know why? Because that particular individual is irreplaceable. There will never be another one. So when I have money, no matter how much money, it's replaceable, it's tangible. Human beings are intangible, not because of what they can invent or assist or affect the universe, but the very existence of a human being, without them contributing zero contribution to the universe, there have never been another human being similar. In other words, God's creation is expressed in the human image, that it's the same stamp, and yet it produces, each time it produces a life. It's unique. A child who's born every second, that child never been around exactly the same. That shows the power of infinity, as opposed to lions, turtles, cats. No matter what, they are the same. They have the same nature, they have the same facial expression, they do not move, they are all the same. Human being is unique. So back to our discussion. So does the Gemara note. I'm in the middle of page 704. The Gemara notes, it is written, is there any number in his regiments of angels? And the Gemara answers, yet it is also written 1,000 thousands ministers unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stand before him. The Gemara says, on one place it says, Ein cheker ligdulato. There is no number to God's greatness expressed through the creation of angels. There are myriads of angels without any limit. On the other end, it says 1,000 thousands, meaning millions. 1,000 thousand is a million. There are millions and millions of angels. If you say million and million, as soon as you put a number, it makes it finite, meaning there is an end to it. Otherwise, numbers do not apply if something is infinite. So ask the Gemara, this is the Gemara in Chagiga. A contradiction from one place. In Job it says, Ein cheker ligdulato, I believe. In Daniel it says the opposite, that there are thousands angels. A part of the Torah, meaning everything is true. Ask the Gemara, on one hand you say that angels are a finite beings, there are a number to how many angels God created, and the other hand says the Torah tells us there is no limit to God's angels.
Standing on one foot.
Well, standing on one foot, yeah, on a straight foot. The second verse indicates that there is indeed a finite number of angels, albeit a very great number, while the rhetorical question in the first verse implies that the number is truly infinite. Here is the Talmud. That's not Kabbalah, that's Gemara Chagiga. The Gemara answers, 1,000 thousands, meaning a million, is the quota of one regiment, but his regiments are innumerable. The second verse then speaks of the number of angels within one regiment, while the first verse alludes to the number of regiments, which is truly infinite. Harry, did you understand that? Just a minute, let's go to explaining. The Gemara says each regiment have 1,000 thousand, meaning a million. How many regiments? Infinite. It will never stop. There is no number. How can you accommodate the two? It's a whole topic. We're not going to talk about it because it seemed too self-contradictory. Just suffice it to say, imagine you standing here and you watch a march of 1 million soldiers marching. After that, another million. And you standing here with a video camera for 1,000 years, 5,000 years. And it will continue, they will continue passing with no end. Because each regiment has a finite number, 1 million. How many regiments? Infinite. Yes, Harry.
You don't want to sound not correct, but everything that happens in this world, God is involved in. Blade, grass, tree, shadow, and he's involved in. What are these angels doing if he's involved in doing everything?
Angels?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They serve God. They stand. They show God's glory. By the way, the answer, obviously, the answer I gave you is the easiest cop out, so to say. There are many answers. In the morning, you say, "Ve'afanim v'chayot hakodesh berash gadol misnasim leumas esrofim leumosom meshaprim v'omrim nagdisho v'naritzach kinem sersod sarfei kodesh hameshalshim lecha kedusha." Every morning you say the answer for it. Right before Shema, right after the Amidah, when the repetition you say that. All they do is stand and praise God all day long. That's the job. By the way, that's the only job.
Wait a minute, we got some angels that other jobs.
Except some major angels. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, there are names that we know their names, and they represent nations, the Jewish people, God's attributes. That's different. But the regiments we talk about, all they do is they get consumed in God by praising God and bowing down before God. That you say. By the way, the same. Sometimes people ask me, "Do you believe in angels? Does Judaism believe in angels?" I say, "When's the last time you prayed?" Because if you pray, you see it right at the beginning of right before Shema. We talked about what they do, right? And there are different groups. And then by Nagdishach, the whole idea, Keter itnu lecha malachim amonei mala. On Shabbat, they place a crown over God. Keter is a crown in Hebrew. I'm speaking here to the people who are advanced in the Hebrew language. The whole prayer is about the Be'ata Kodesh Yoshev Teilot. Be'ata Kodesh is a very holy prayer. Umekablin dein min dein, they receive one from the other. That's Aramaic already. Ve'amrin Kaddish b'shmei meroi moilo. In the shmei shamayim is meroma, higher, ilo, over and above. It's all the prayer. Part of the prayer we say is we repeat praises that the angels share before God. That's their job. By the way, in that way, that's our job too. Except God gave us the Torah, so He gave us access directly to Him. And number two, He gave us a mission which He did not give the angels. Page 705. So again, you will need to know it because it comes up sometimes in Hasidic teaching. Are there any number? People ask me, how many angels there are? Regiments. Each regiment is about 1 million soldiers. How many regiments? Infinite. There is no told number to the angels. Yet, now let's go on the other hand, says the Rabbi 705. Before Him, before God, all of them are accounted as nothing at all and are nullified in their very existence. Anybody know when did God create angels? On the sixth day? Good guess, but it's not the right one. On Monday, when God created heaven and earth, He created heaven and its hosts and earth and its hosts. So on Monday, God created angels. That's why they demanded the Torah get to them, because they were created before Adam. They were created a few days before. So they were created beings, just like God created everything else. Just as one word is truly nullified in relation to the essence of being of the articulate soul, the soul possessing the power of speech, while the speech of the soul was still present in the soul's faculty of thought, or in the will and desire of the heart, as has been explained above at length. Just let me remind you again. One word in comparison to all the potential utterances of a human being. Let's talk a human being. How many words can I speak in a minute, Ali?
I don't remember the number.
100 words a minute. Times 60, 6,000. Times 18 hours that we are up. If I were to speak all the time, it's 36,000. Huh?
You know some lives like that.
What?
Ooh.
Times 80 times a year, 365 days times 80, it comes out to 100,650,000, something like that. Over 3 billion words in a lifetime. If I live till 80, some people who advance over 80, so they have more words in their capacity.
Each person is given a certain amount of words for his lifetime.
Right. But assuming the power of speech to speak 18 hours a day times 80, some people live to 600 years. So, but the average of life of 80 years, Yemeshno Seinu Boem Shivim Shona Vim Bigvuro Ishmoinim Shona, right? The King David spoke about 70 or 80 years. Now, if I were to take one word divided by the potential of 3,150,000,000 words, the percentage is what? 0.60000003. I just saw it. That's the power of one word compared with my lifetime. Now you take God, who is infinite, so it's not 6,000 years, it's endless. The possibility for God and the value of one word or the utterances he used, about 100 words, to create the entire universe is not even a speck of dust in comparison to God. And all that created all the angels, all the human beings, all the universes from beginning till the end. So you can imagine how far God is from a human being. So it's not just like a king in his palace and a human being in a dunghill. It's a king of all kings in way, way far, and the human being in this comparison is not even one speck of dirt compared to the king, and yet God is paying attention with great details and is affected deeply by that person and wants them to be happy and healthy. That's the point the Rebbe is making. I'm reading here. In chapter 20 and 21, the Alter Rebbe explained at length how a single utterance is as absolutely nothing when compared to the infinite capacity of the articulate soul. This is so even when the word has already been uttered and has thereby become a distinct entity. Even more so in the case when the person's speech is in potentia, in the person's thought or heart's desire, which are the source of speech, since a person thinks before he speaks and speaks about things that he desires. In such an instance, the single word is totally nullified in its source and is not at all perceptible as an entity separate from it. Yeah, I made you the calculation to a word that was spoken. Now put it into the mind. The mind can think much more than 100 words a minute and many, many more. So too with divine speech that creates and animates angels, the various worlds and all creatures. Divine speech is always absolutely united with its source and is therefore always in a state of total nullification to it. By God, speech is not like by me that it left my body. When I speak up, it goes out. By God, it feels everywhere. So when God spoke, it's like my power, potential to speak. It's not the actual speech. So you can, it's totally nullified, it's totally connected with God, therefore it's completely nullified. All these angels ask, where is the place of his glory? And they answer, the whole physical earth is full of his glory. That is, how is this world full of his glory? Because of its people, Israel. It says, Ayeh mekom kevodo. The angels say, where is God's glory? And what do they say? Here on earth. And the Talmud asks, why? Because Israel, the Jewish people, are down on earth. That's where God wants to be. That's why I put the temple, the holy temple there. For the Holy One, blessed be He, forsook the higher and lower creatures that are not the ultimate purpose of His creation, choosing none of them but Israel, His people, whom he brought out of Egypt, the obscenity of the earth, to the place of filth and impurity, like the lowly and disgraceful individual who was raised from the dunghill by the king in person. The children of Israel were brought forth out of Egypt by the king himself, not through an angel, which is a created being whose abode is in the world of Beria, Yetzirah, Osiya, nor through a messenger from the level of the world of Atzilut, but the Holy One, blessed be he himself in his glory, descended there. As it is written, and I have descended to save him from the hand of the Egyptians. So I explained that I hope I made myself clear. In other words, God himself goes out to the dunghill. It's not like a king going to a dunghill, because the king and the creature that is in the dunghill, they both are humans. And the king is a king of a finite number of people and countries. God is infinite. God's creation, the words that create the universe, are utterly non-existent compared to God's greatness. And therefore, the human being that was created, the Jewish people that were created from God's utterances, are so far from God, yet he himself, not an angel, not an extension of God, but God himself goes down here. As the angels are asked, where is God? And they say, he's with the people he loves, Israel. And God himself goes to the dunghill, which is Egypt at the time. It was the most despicable and of filth and impurity spiritually, and he himself pulls him out and brings him from Mount Sinai, giving him the Torah. Just as the king in the parable, after raising the individual from the dung heap, takes him into his palace and shares with him the closest companionship, in a like manner did God treat his people in order to bring them near to him in true closeness and unity, with a real attachment of soul, so that the Jew's soul will be truly bound up with the Almighty. This is also so regarding the Torah, concerning which God says, I have written and given my soul to the Jewish people by giving them the Torah. God's soul is in the Torah. Thus, not only is the Jew's soul truly bound up with God, but God's soul too is united with the Jew. Remember, I talked to you about the intensity. God did not just save us and took us out, but he gave us the key to the inner chamber, and he says, I'm there all the time. You can find me all the time. God not only came down Mount Sinai and then he departed, he saved the person and then he went home, but he takes the person to his chamber. He gives him the Torah. What's the uniqueness of the Torah? The Torah is God's soul. How does the Ten Commandments begin? With the first word. Anybody knows the first word of the Ten Commandments? Anochi, Natani, Anochi. Ah? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. We have a nice Baal Koire here. Anochi. The word Anochi, in which language is it? Egyptian. It's not even Hebrew. And there is a whole discussion. How can the first word God speak directly to humanity? He uses an Egyptian language, but that's beside. The word Anochi, according to Kabbalah, is an acronym of 4 words. Aleph, Nun, Chaf, Yud. Ana, Nafshi, Ktavit, Yavit. I, Ana, Ani, Nafshi, my soul, Nefesh. Ktavit, wrote down. Yahavit, I gave you. I put my soul in this book, and I gave it to you. That's word Anochi is, from the first of the Ten Commandments. That's why when you have a Hasidic Baal Koire who reads the Torah, and they understand the meaning, the deeper meaning of the words, it sounds much deeper than just reading the text. Because once you understand that Anochi is not even, it's a foreign language. But the Anochi, the first one, is made out of 4 letters that are bringing out that God places his soul in the Torah. Ali, you learned it for the first time?
Anochi, I never know. I think I may have heard you say something about that it was Egyptian, but I don't remember.
It's the Gemara, it's not me. Says the Rebbe, on the time when God gave us the Torah, and the level of kisses of mouth to mouth. So that's the description in the book of Proverbs and Song of Songs. So that the Jew's mouth be united with the mouth of and speech of God by uttering the word of God, namely the halacha. A lot is being discussed here. I'm just going to say God spoke, used his mouth. God has no image, but the mouth is the expression where you say, you connect to people. We study Torah how? By uttering the words. You use your mouth. So we have the mouth to mouth, kisses. That's how you express affection, by kissing someone mouth to mouth. When I study Torah, like we just are doing now, we are connecting to God on the level of mouth to mouth. You understand that? Makes sense? Soon we're going to talk about hugging. But mouth to mouth is done when we study Torah. When a Jew speaks and studies the word of Torah, his speech is united with supernal speech in a matter of kisses of mouth to mouth. This unity, however, is external in comparison with the deeper and more inward union of spirit and spirit. As explained in the previous chapter, the deeper level of unity is also attained through Torah study and the fusion of spirit of man with spirit of God, namely the comprehension of Torah and the knowledge of his will and wisdom. When I do not just utter words, but I put my mind into it, understanding intellectually, now it's a spirit to spirit. It's a bond which is much, much deeper. As in chapter 5, the Rabbi has spoken about three levels of bonding, three circling, being circled and circling. I don't know if you remember that. The point is, if I study Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and I don't understand what I'm saying, I connect to God on an external level of mouth to mouth. That's called kisses. If I study Torah and understand the Torah, the text, now I am bonding with God to a much internal level, much higher level, which is spirit to spirit, because I use my brains. And when I use my brains, I cannot think of anything else. And the idea is encircling me, comprehending me. So there is a unity that on both ends, and it's considered a complete unity. When Torah is studied with comprehension, in other words, I understand and I try to figure it out well, the person knows both God's will and wisdom. Knowing the halacha, the law that determines that an object is, say, either kosher or non-kosher, constitutes the knowledge of God's will, while comprehending the reason for the halacha relates to God's wisdom. So when you study and understand, there are 2 points. One, you know what you discover what God wants, that's God's will. And then you discover why, what's the reason, and then you have God's wisdom. Because once you understand the reason, now you know what God's wisdom was, what's coming, where did God want, why, what's the purpose, why did God want it to be that way? Now you have 2 points that are uniting together, which are truly one. God's will and wisdom are truly one with Him. And through Torah study, Jews become united with God in a matter of union of spirit to spirit and spirit. And also with a form of embrace, hugging. For Torah and mitzvot also affect the unity of an embrace, similar to a person embracing his friend with his body and arms, namely the fulfillment of the positive precepts with the 248 organs which the human beings possesses. Performance of the 248 positive commandments bring about a state of embrace wherein God's 248 organs embraces man's. And for the 248 ordinance are the 248 organs of the king, as mentioned earlier in chapter 23. Says the Rebbe, when you fulfill the mitzvot, you hug God. Hugging is the mitzvot. Each organ of the body is an appropriate vessel for the particular faculty of the soul that resides therein, such as the eye for the faculty of sight, the ear for the faculty of hearing, and so on. So too, each mitzvah is an appropriate vessel for the specific emanation of the divine will that desires the Jew to perform the particular commandment. So each body part, each vessel in my body corresponds to one mitzvah. When I do one mitzvah, I bring energy to that body organ. So it's considered like hugging. And in general manner, these 248 positive mitzvot are divided into three categories: right, left, and center, namely chesed, kindness is the right, din, stern justice, and rachamim, mercy. There are mitzvot that are coming from chesed, like hosting for Shabbat, giving people a good advice. There are some that are very strict: fasting on Yom Kippur, circumcision on this 8th day, and there are some that are in the middle. There are mitzvot which are in the category of the right side, chesed, others in the category of the left side, din, still others in the category of the center, rachamim. These are the two arms of the body. Chesed is the right arm, gevura is or din is the left, and rachamim represent the body, the center. Just as when a person embraces another, he does so with both arms and his body, so too to the two arms and body of the mitzvot embrace the Jew who performs them. Did you understand so far? Because Rabbi is going to go into another point. In other words, when I embrace, I use two hands, all encircling. So my body and the two arms are embracing, encircling the person. Says the Rebbe, when I perform a mitzvah, I embrace God, because there are mitzvot that are on the right side, there are mitzvot that are on the left side, and there are mitzvot that are on the center. That's why you need all three. If someone says, I perform only mitzvot such and such, only Shabbat, or only whatever makes sense, there is no three, those three does not exist in that person. There is no embrace. Imagine you go to someone and, oh, I miss you, and you give him like that. There is no embrace. It's a joke. Embracing somebody must be with all my body, meaning two arms and the body, and these are the performance of mitzvot. So again, you have three ways in which God expresses bonding us. One is kisses, mouth to mouth, and that is when I study Torah, the 5 books of Moses, without even understanding what I'm saying. If I use my intellect to understand God's wisdom and the reasoning, now it becomes spirit to spirit. It's a bonding that is all encompassing, not just mouth to mouth. And then you have another type of embrace, which is hugging. The hugging seemingly is a little more external, but it entails right, left arm, and the body. All three must be, because there are mitzvot God gave us on the right side, on the left side, some are in the center, and all three. When I perform even one mitzvah, but it's part of all the three, it encompasses all of it, all the entire body, and God is hugging me and allow me to hug him. So if someone is asking me, what can I do to make God listen to me? I heard that you say this prayer. I say to them, do a mitzvah. You don't need to go to a rabbi. You don't need to give tzedakah. They say, oh, if you give tzedakah, we're going to pray for you 18 times. I don't know if you heard, in Israel, it became a major business. If you need a shidduch, this rabbi will pray for you for 180. People call today, it's telemarketing in Israel. They call people and say, for 180, I heard that you're single. They go on the list of the dating, Jewish dating, Israeli dating, and they call boys and girls and said, this famous rabbi has allowed us for 100 people that you'll pray for 100, limited number. And you can be the lucky one if you pay 1,800 shekel and for 130 days. And then we are sure you're going to find your shidduch. If not, next month we'll give you another opportunity. And we make a business out of asking people to pray for you. Of course, giving tzedakah is a great mitzvah. And prayer, when a tzaddik pray, is a great mitzvah. But if I want God to heal, If I want God to help me find a shidduch, to be blessed with children, whatever it might be, open up the book, study Torah, and God will provide. Do a mitzvah, whatever mitzvah you find at the moment, whatever mitzvah at hand. Don't be fooled by those charlatans.
Why are we positive?
And I am so adamantly about that because continuously people come up with new inventions of how to reach God instead of looking at the Torah. God, Anochi, God put his life. He took his heart, put it in the book and says, here it is, my heart is here. You study Torah. By the way, what I'm telling you is not here in Tanya, it's in the Talmud. The Talmud goes on to say if someone has a headache, should study Torah. It's the best pill. The Talmud says the best pill is to study Torah. If the evil inclination is convincing you you're addicted, assuming that you're able to control, otherwise you should seek help from professionals. But if it's at a level where there is a possibility without a professional, the Talmud says study Torah. The Torah is the best pill. The Talmud used that as a pill. So anytime people say, okay, let's go to this gravesite, of course you should go to holy people's gravesites. But that's not why we should, that's not the way to reach out to God. The best way to reach out to God is study the Torah, perform the mitzvot, pray to Hashem. You don't need anybody else doing it because you can do it directly. Yes, Ali. Who says? He's talking about the negative in a moment.
48 positive.
What?
He's talking about 248 positive mitzvot.
So Ali is asking why he's talking about the positive commandments only and not about the restrictive commandments 365. Ali, I'm going to ask you if you are willing to give an answer for that.
Wait, ask the question.
The answer is obvious. The negative precepts, you don't do anything. The positive involves active doing. If I tell you don't drink, and you don't on Yom Kippur, don't eat on Yom Kippur, and you refrain from eating, you are embracing God on all three levels. But there is no act that you did. You refrained from eating. Do you understand? If I tell you don't lie, you don't just tell the truth, but there is no active. But if I could tell you keep the Shabbat by dressing Langehosen, keep the Shabbat by wearing a nice shirt, then you by actively doing a mitzvah, you are embracing God.
We were supposed to remind you of a story you would tell us.
But you know what? Okay, I'll share the story. This story is in honor of Ali. The story is told by a rabbi, a very famous Chabad rabbi. He said his name, Rabbi, I'm going to use the initial letter of his last name, L, from a country in Europe. He says that when he raised his children, by the way, his children are classmates, are very close friends of mine. When he raised his children, he used to use his hands, as was the tradition and the proper way of raising children, corporal punishment.
That's why I left Yeshiva.
Huh?
That's why I left Yeshiva.
You left Yeshiva because
Getting beat up every day.
you got beaten up every day?
Serious. I told my mother that she don't go to the rabbi. I was afraid to give the rabbi this.
Why they beat you every day?
I didn't say the right answer. If I do something right,
Just like that. Okay, that's called abuse.
that was the European method.
All right. I was raised, and I keep saying that even though all around me, parents used to use hands all the time, public, private, it was part of raising. My parents, thank God, never raised their hands. Never. My teachers did, to me, much less than others, and I was a big troublemaker. But I don't know why. I did not there was kids that is, so to say, attracted teachers to beat them up. There was once a teacher that beat up the kid so bad that his watch flew and broke into pieces. And this was a nice watch. They would beat him up so badly I don't know why it's not right. At the time, it wasn't right. I want to go back to our discussion. So this man would reprimand his children, but he says that sometimes he had a very tough day at work. As I don't know about people in the room, but some people can relate to it, that when you have a very stressful day, you come home, you're nervous, people did not respect you, you didn't reach the goals, etc. And the kids suddenly, are not listening, they don't need. So you would be very, very liberal with using his hands. It came to a point that he felt very bad. He knew after he would use his hands, he regretted it. He felt that it was wrong, but he had no control. It's a trigger, if you understand what it means. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have the control, I believe, most of us. But there was a trigger because he was drained. He came home, all he wanted quietness. Then they start fighting each other. Or the mom is raising her voice because I asked her to take a shower and you didn't. He would go and just use his hands right and left. Afterwards, he would feel remorse, and it was beyond. It came to a point he felt that he's losing control about his conduct. So the next time he was by the Rebbe, he turned to the Rebbe by Yechidut, by a private audience. That's what he said about himself. The Rebbe asked him about his work. He was a shliach. He is a shliach today. And then the Rebbe says, anything else or some house family? And he says to the Rebbe, there is something that he has no control over. And every time he does it, he feels remorseful and he doesn't know what to do about it. It eats him up. So the Rebbe says to him, if you had, the Rebbe says to him the following, does your son bring friends to the house? And the rabbi said, yes, all the time. He says, if your son and the friend both did not do what they're supposed to, were you going to punish the friend? And the man says, no way. So the Rebbe says to him, why not? After all, he did as bad, he disrespected, he fought the same as your son. Why you punishing your son and not his neighbor, the neighbor? And the rabbi says to him, because my friend is not my son. He has another set of parents. If I raise my hands, the parents would come after me. And the rabbi says to him with these words in Yiddish, they are so powerful. The rabbi says to him, next time when you raise your hand, you need to stop for a moment and your hand should shake, realizing that you children are God's children. And who gave you the right to touch God's children? And he says this is what made them completely change. And the way the Rebbe sees this ties in with this chapter, I thought, when I heard the story.
Another story?
Just a minute before your story, I need to finish here. Did you get the point? Everybody got the point?
Yeah.
So once you understand it's God's children, then it's a whole different attitude. So imagine a stranger walks in here. I don't want to put on tefillin. I don't want to be dressed with Langerhäusen. But he is God's children. He's Hashem's child. How lucky I am to be in the presence of Hashem's child. So 2 days ago, he cursed the rabbi. 5 days ago, he tried to convince people not to come to the synagogue. But he is God's child. How will I treat if God is here and he's sending his son over? The attitude is completely, completely different. And that's what the rabbi wants to share with us here. That once we understand the greatness of God and how low God lowered himself to the dunghill to take us out. But he did not just take us out and put us in a hotel. He says, you come with me to my chamber and you have the inner chamber access. I give you the Torah. My soul is in the Torah. Every time you study Torah, you know what happens? You ask for a kiss. If you understand what you study Torah, you are bonding with me spirit to spirit. When you perform a mitzvah, you get a hug from me. That's a whole different attitude. Then, do I want to separate myself and put dirt in the palace? Do I want to walk away from God? God forbid, I don't want that. Harry, is this directly connected? Or okay. You know what? We'll stop right here because I'm afraid I went too far. Next week, the rabbi is going to talk about that we actually say it in every time when we make a bracha. Anytime we sanctify God before we eat or consume anything or celebrate any event, we are reminded about that bond of hugging, kissing, spirit to spirit, the bonding that is beyond the rest of the universe. And that will continue on page 709 next week. Thank you, everybody. Just a minute. Good night. I need to stop recording.